This is update for January 4, 2024, day 680 of the war, end of the date update. Also catch up for January 3 and 2. I'm gonna always start with the general strategic updates, and I'm gonna switch then to the situation on the battlefield. I haven't spoken much about economy of Ukraine and what's going on economy-wise, so I just want to give some update because it's becoming more relevant, given that Ukraine is most likely not going to get any help anymore from the US. And probably from Europe as well. There are also rumors circulating that German Chancellor may resign, and so there will be a lot less support for Ukraine in continental Europe. I would say UK and Scandinavia are still strong supporters of Ukraine, but they just economically not there, and just generally finance-wise, the situation is also not there, with exception probably of Norway, due to actually those economic policies and the war on conventional energy that I mentioned before. So basically, opportunities for any meaningful help for Ukraine are close to zero. I'm going to give you what this really means. That Ukraine cannot borrow anything on capital markets. It's obviously close to Ukraine. So really, what Ukraine is left with is what it earns, and that really means export, and then obviously what it spends, which is import. And so Ukraine exported 36 billion, the goods worth of 36 billion, roughly 36 billion US dollars in 2023. This is one of the lowest number in decades, probably like in lowest number in 20 years or something like that. So you can kind of get a feeling how low Ukrainian economy dipped because of the war. At the same time, Ukraine imported goods worth of, I think, 60 plus, I think $65 billion. So the gap. So basically, it's like your revenue. Think it's a very simple way. Your revenue is $36, and you are spending like 60, I think $5 or $63 per year. You are hugely negative, and it's obviously not sustainable. So, there are two sort of levers that Ukraine has. One is government reserves, which I think a little bit less than 40 billion. I think it's like 38 billion or 30 something, 37 billion US dollars. That's one cushion. And then the other one is actually what actually needs to be done is market exchange rate between Ukrainian currency and let's say US, like the rest of the world currency, including US and euros. Because right now it's a fixed rate. It's absolute insanity what's being done economically and finance wise in Ukraine, monetary wise, because this fixed rate has been since the beginning of the war at 36.5 Ukrainian hryvnias for one US dollars, which again, this is what it creates, this distortion where imports are roughly 2 times larger than exports. This is obviously is disastrous policy. And at this point, it actually the good actually part about this is that absence of the Western help is actually may make Ukraine much more healthier society. That actually, I see it as in some way positive, and actually opportunity for positive change for Ukraine finally, because in some ways this help was essentially like getting narcotics from a drug dealer, and that's what it was. It was preventing Ukraine from changing for better actually, and enacting proper monetary and economic policies. So what this also means, and Ukrainian central bank already started devaluing Ukrainian currency. So now it's about slightly, so it's from 36.5. They devalued over probably like past months to like 38 and a change. As you can imagine, when you spend 2 times more and then you earn, you really need to devalue your currency to compensate for that, to make your export more competitive significantly. So Ukraine probably is looking at devaluation on the magnitude of like one up to 60 Ukrainian hryvnias for $1 to make it healthy. Let's put this way. And the real actually solution is not to have this central bank dictate, but actually market forces deciding the exchange rate, and at the same time government not issuing unbacked currency, because obviously if you issue unbacked currency, you will end up like Turkey or Argentina, which we'll see if the new Argentinian president is going to be able to actually tame that situation there. At the same time, Ukraine has this slightly less than 40 billion US dollars, so that's another cushion, and this is all kind of makes it looks like that Ukraine can survive 2024. At that point, as I said, if the correct actions are enacted, soon and now, then actually Ukraine can continue economically even into 2025, and things can start to heal, and actually Ukraine can be on sustainable path to continue the war effort just from economic perspective. The problem with what I just said is that there are no people and no plans to do right things in Ukrainian government at the moment. So things will continue probably for some time in negative direction until there is realization settles in Ukrainian bureaucrats and top politicians that the help is not forthcoming anytime soon. And that probably will either there are two options at that point. As I said, there's 1917 moment, and the other one is that they somehow grow brains and start changing things for better in Ukraine, which I would say I believe the chance of the latter are close to zero. So there will be some change, and I would say more likely than not, it's going to be a revolutionary change in Ukraine in the course of 2024. So this is talking about the economic and financial side of the affairs in Ukraine. Now I'm going to switch more to about the military side of the coin. And first item is this new mobilization law, where it's being thrown around like a hot potato between politician and head of Ukraine army. Nobody wants to be, I would say, parent of this new law. So the parliament is saying they're not going to pass this law the way it was presented to them. And so they're going to change it. And basically there is a back and forth in Ukraine parliament because nobody wants to be responsible for this law. But the situation is forcing the hand, and decision will need to be made one way or another. But again, even in this situation, there's clearly lack of understanding what needs to be done, why people don't want to go and defend actually Ukraine and fight in the Ukraine army, because majority that they don't, and that's not their really fault. It's not that they are bad the way it's being presented. It's actually the incentives are simply not there. It's actually there are tons of disincentives that's being created by this Ukrainian bureaucratic machine and political class that actually runs the country and really represents bureaucratic machine in Ukraine that is not really representing interest of the majority of population. And so this is where the problem with all of this. So we'll see how they all end up sort of throwing this hand grenade between themselves and who's going to get blown. But I don't expect anything sort of positive or meaningful out of that process. It will be some kind of Frankenstein law that doesn't make any kind of sense. That's probably will be most likely outcome out of it. The second point is there was interview of the top talking head of Ukrainian president on Ukrainian TV, where he basically stated that Ukraine should not be developing defense manufacturing industry because it will be destroyed by Russia by Russian air missile attacks or aircraft attack or whatever. Basically, it's just excuse not to do anything and to continue basically relying or hoping for the help from the West and do nothing. Essentially, the most parasitic approach to life. Let's put this way. There is a very good saying by Lenin, who said, "Those who don't want to do, they find reasons, and those who want to do, they find ways." So in this case, this is exactly the situation where this is reflection of Ukrainian president and his clique that's running the country, that they are really inept and wrong people for the situation. And I'm not even talking about multiple connections to the Russian intelligence services and specifically KGB, and basically it's in the end it's one thing, it's KGB behind all of those multiple faces of the Russian intelligence agencies. So, and just to give you an example, Ukraine has many opportunities if you really want to, open up this market and open up this opportunity for entrepreneurs. People will figure out ways how to basically manufacture and remain safe. In just a very primitive way, Ukraine has Zaporizhya, which is here, which is essentially separated from the rest of Ukraine by the mountains, Carpathian Mountains. So that's already pretty good natural defensive shield. You can add air defense there. So essentially, you can figure out ways how to basically place manufacturing there. If you're really creative, like for example, Germany was after World War One. It actually created manufacturing facilities in Sweden and in Switzerland. And actually was fooling I think U.S. intelligence and UK intelligence. They couldn't even figure out till the World War II started actually what they were doing there. Ukraine doesn't need to fool anyone. Simply, there are countries that really strong supporters of Ukraine that I'm sure you can negotiate deals and Ukraine can, put their manufacturing facilities there or allow entrepreneurs from Ukraine to start, making weapons. I would say like Lithuania would be one on the list. The Latvia, Estonia, those countries, I'm almost certain that they would be willing to help. Because they understand that they annexed actually the member of the upper chamber of Russian parliament the other day, I think a couple days ago, already said that they need to create a corridor from mainland Russia to Kaliningrad region that is actually used to be East Prussia, basically Königsberg, German Königsberg, that was captured by the Soviet Union and now part of Russia after World War II. So they would like to create a corridor by force, obviously by military force, and this is going to go through the Lithuanian territory. So and this is actually his comment was in response to Lithuania closing down Russian-speaking schools. And just for those who don't understand the how they came into being, it's essentially the Soviet Union, once it captured Lithuania, he started effort of colonization where they were forcefully bringing people from the rest of the Soviet Union, Russian speaking, and creating schools there, forcefully converting Lithuanian schools to Russian speaking, and so on. So basically, it's a typical imperial colonization approach that was done by Soviet Union, and essentially, the Lithuania and the rest of the countries are going through the decolonization effort since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And it takes, as you can see, it's all very deeply entrenched, and it takes forever. It's just essentially this Russian war attack against Ukraine that's actually was sort of last straw that forced or prompted Lithuanian countries like that to close down Russian schools, because they effectively could be casus belli for Russia to attack Lithuania or any other, or whatever country, because they claim that they are defending Russian citizens there. This was exactly was sort of excuse for the war by Russia in case of Ukraine. I'm going to switch to situation in Russia, where actually government is surprisingly, for bureaucracy, is doing right things for the Russia. So they actually building a fleet of CNC machines, and they actively buying up on the world market, and most of it is coming from China. So the purchases, they grew up like almost like 10 times, and this is excellent tools to really quickly start manufacturing whatever you need. You don't need much training. You don't need workers. Essentially, you just need several engineers who can draw, and then you basically need assembly workers who just assemble, which is fairly primitive exercise. So basically, you don't need those skilled, highly trained, workers that would usually work with this machines in the past, how it used to be, like, let's say 80 years ago or so. And then you can manufacture a lot of very useful things on the front line. So, like, for example, this looks like as you can see, this looks like the internal combustion engine is being manufactured for probably like a drone. So for UAV. So so basically, you can increase your UAV output. Basically, a lot of like, I would say, relatively high-tech things like rockets can be done with this. So or missiles, whatever you call it. So as this is again what I said before, Russia is not backing out. There is no change of plans. The country is in full gear, continuing to sort of beef up its military industrial complex, and actually making it much more powerful. It's probably not going to happen immediately overnight, but little by little, it's being built up. And when you see those GDP numbers that coming out of Russia, this is not GDP that's coming from the improvement of living standard of average Russian. This is actually all of that military spending. That's where this industrial production is going up. As you can see, it's effectively all of this militaristic efforts that being done in Russia. Now let's switch to the situation on the battlefield. In general, situation remains relatively quieter on the lower end activity, and this is because of the holiday season. So it started with the New Year, and now it's going into the Christmas, or Orthodox Christmas, which is on January 6th. So I think sometime after that, the activity will start to pick up military-wise, but it's all for now subdued. Nevertheless, I'm just going to quickly walk through the whole situation. So in a clockwise fashion, as I always do. So the situation along the state borders remain the same, quiet, nothing really special. And I just want to give a caveat in terms of all of these missile attacks against each other. They really don't mean much or anything. This is really just factually propaganda show by both sides. that really does not determine the outcome of this war. So that's why I'm not commenting on that. And even like the destruction of the Russian ship, its military vessel, it's essentially useless. The Russian Navy is useless. There's literally like Navy forces has zero influence on this war. The least, I would say, useful uh, piece of the military force on both sides, and luckily Ukraine didn't have much, and hopefully does not invest any money in that area, although they do, but again, it's a completely misguided effort, let's put this way. Uh, okay, now I'm gonna go back to the walk through the front line. So let's just move to the situation on the North Lugansk front line. So things here are more or less quiet. The only area of Russian pressure is this from northeast of Kupiansk, pretty much right there. They're not terribly far away from the town, about like 7 kilometers. The pressure has subsided, so for now things more or less stable there. Now let's move to the North Donbass front line. The northern sector is again also fairly quiet. The southern is also, the activity is much weaker. Attacks in the same area, basically west of Bakhmut and southwest of Bakhmut in the western direction. As you can see, this Andriivka, Klishivka, and there is Bogdanivka. This is sort of major places of Russian effort, but at the same time, the activity here is on a much smaller scale than it even used to be. Now let's look at central Donbass front line. Things here also on the lower end in terms of activity. Nevertheless, Russian forces still continuing to apply pressure around this Avdiivka salient. The basically situation has been stabilized at this point. In the long run, this situation is very difficult and dangerous for Ukraine, but temporarily it's stable at this moment. For how long, nobody knows. It really depends on how much more Russian command wants to throw into the battle. There's some very light pressure from northeast of Novomykhailivka. Essentially, Russian forces want to force withdrawal from Novomykhailivka of Ukrainian troops, essentially, and then eliminate this whole salient that's centered around, not centered, but like the apex is being in Novomykhailivka, essentially. But again, the effort there is very minimal on the Russian side. Now let's look at Zaporizhya front line. Most of it is quiet. The only place where Russian troops show some activity, some pressure. Again, it's all very mild. It's nothing major. It's around this Robotyne salient with essentially at this point it's also the whole effort has completely stalled. Now let's look at the situation along the Dnipro River. Things here are status quo, no changes. Ukrainian bridgehead is still there. As I said many times before, strategically it's a stalemate where Russian forces just don't have enough resources and to destroy it, or I would say it will cost a fortune, if I can say it that way, to destroy it. And Ukrainian command does not have resources to expand it, so it's just basically lose situation in some way. I would describe it that way. That's all for today. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye bye.